Hey guys, my name is Marta, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I recently reread this book after 4 years. This is my first time reading it, and I really fell in love with the story and realized that the fear I had of rereading it was stupid. And now that I have finished this reread, I feel the need to express my thoughts and feelings on the story, on the characters, and on the amazing work of art that is Jane Eyre. Before I get to the video, I would advise you don't watch it if you haven't read the novel, since I am going to be discussing things that are considered spoilers, and it's a book that you have to read, so go read it and then go back to this video if you wanna hear what I have to say about Jane Eyre. And now, without further ado, let's get to the book. If you don't know what Jane Eyre is about, the book tells the story of Jane Eyre, our protagonist and narrator, from her childhood to adulthood. The book can then be classified as a Build romance, which is a literary subgenre that really developed in the 19th century and which you can see featured in another Victorian works, such as my very well-loved and recently read epic poem Aurora Leigh by Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And like Aurora Leigh, this book tells a story of a woman in the 19th century and her struggles to become the person she wants, partially because of her gender, even though that is not a huge theme in the novel itself. Before I get into the story, I would like to discuss its characters, and I am going to start with Jane. Jane Eyre, the protagonist of the book, I find is a character that is very easily loved or hated. It's a character that either you will love because you can relate to her, her personality and her experience, or you will hate because you will find her annoying, which is, I think, the thing that people complain the most about in negative reviews of this book. Jane is a character that is presented at us from the very beginning as this basically plain person who's not really pretty and who's very small in size. And that is something that is emphasized throughout the book, which is why I feel the need to say it now. So from her initial description, you can already guess that she's not going to be the typical heroine you are used to find in novels such as the protagonist in Jane Austen's works, who are always beautiful. And Jane is then presented at us as this very normal person, I would say, who hasn't had the easiest childhood since she was orphaned and grew up in this family who didn't really like her and who mistreated her. Jane is also a person who is, because of the way she grew up and because of the way she was treated during her childhood, she is used to look down on herself, and he doesn't really believe in herself nor in her worth, and that is something that he will overcome as the novel progresses, which is why I think one of the strongest points of the book is the characters' growth as people and how they change as the story moves forward. Jane is, despite her insecurities, a character that from the very beginning is shown to be very headstrong, very decided, and very aware of what she wants, and very aware of the fact that he wants to accomplish what she wants to do with her life. Which is the main reason why when he gets a job offer as a governess in Thornfield Hall, he takes it, and which is the reason why he leaves Mr. Rochester as soon as she realizes that he had been lying to her, despite the fact that he is still completely in love with him. And that the fact that he is someone who knows what's good and what's bad is something that I really like about her as a person. Jane is someone also who's presented at us as this general good person despite of her flaws. He is good in terms of the fact that he's willing to help, which is something that you can really see at the very end, but at the same time someone who is a bit mad at the world, especially at the very beginning, and who doesn't really have much hope, which is also something that will change as the novel progresses. And that change is something that I said I really like about her, because you can see how realistically crafted he is and how much she grows up as a person as the novel moves forward and as she grows up and experiences new things. So to sum up Jane as a character, he's a character that I think is someone very complex and very realistically crafted, and at the same time someone that I think is very easily to love and to identify with if you share any traits with her, whether it's her physically normal plain appearance or her not so confident but at the same time very headstrong personality. The other main character of the book is Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rochester is presented as this man that is older than Jane and who is physically very handsome and who is basically the typical romantic hero who has a tragic past that he's hiding and who hasn't yet married despite having had affairs with multiple people throughout his life, which might be due to the fact that he has a wife closed in the attic of his house, the existence of which he completely ignores. But anyway, Mr. Rochester, as you can see, he is a very morally complex character. He has this facade that is very appealing that you cannot help but like in a way because he's very charming. He treats Jane at some moments with kindness and you can see how he really cares about her despite her being a mere worker of the house, but at the same time you can't help but hate him because of the way she treats her at other moments and because of the fact that you soon realize that he is not the best person ever when it comes to treating people, especially his wives. Mr. Rochester, as I said, is a character that is very romantic, literally speaking, and his personality could be, I think, could be even compared, and I might be saying nonsense, to your typical romantic hero, an example of which could be even Victor Frankenstein, who has, as Victor Frankenstein in Mary Shelley's story, has this dark secret that he's trying to hide, but that will come back to him and get his revenge. And as Bertha, such as the creature in Frankenstein, is completely ignored by him. He doesn't really speak about her existence, but then he fights back and gets her revenge. Also, on Mr. Rochester, no, I don't think his references to other pieces of literature stop with that Victor Frankenstein-esque personality trait, as I strongly believe that you can really make a comparison between his blindness to that in Oedipus Rex. Because at the very end, and this is something that I only just thought about yesterday night, so that might be me having delusions reading at night, but the moment when you get told that he gets blind because of the fire that has happened in Thorfinn Hall and he cannot longer see is, I believe, a very clear parallelism to that last scene in Oedipus Rex when he takes his eyes out after realizing that he has fallen in love with his mother, because such as Oedipus Rex, Mr. Rochester has been ignoring his reality, hasn't been attending the hints that there was something going on, and once it's too late, the mental blindness that he had is now materialized in a physical blindness as soon as that reality materializes in the form of Bertha doing her revenge, and as in Oedipus Rex, Oedipus realizes what has been going on and he gets physically blind as a punishment of his previous previous mental blindness which he had forced upon himself because he was very aware of that he had a woman, his wife, close in the attic. And that blindness, by the way, is something that I find to be very beautiful of him at the very end, because I really like how it is through Jane being with him and teaching him how to be loved, that he regains his eyesight. And I think that's beautiful because it's as if Jane was teaching him some sort of kindness, some sort of how to be kind, how to be a good person, and once he interiorizes that love, he starts regaining his sight. And I personally find that beautiful. Moving on to the rest of the characters of the book, because my battery is dying, I have to say that the book features some other characters such as Bertha, which I have already hinted at, which is Rochester's old wife that he has closed up in the attic and who sadly doesn't have a voice in the story, and we get told her story through Mr. Rochester's voice. And he is a character that I think is not really well treated in the story, since she is not only blamed to be mad, but her actions are justified by madness instead of by other means such as the trauma she had to suffer. Anyway, thankfully we had Jean Rhys in the 20th century rewriting her story in his book Wild Sargassy, which I haven't read but I really want to, and she finally decided to give her a voice. But despite her, we also have some other characters such as the other people working at Thornfield Hall, or the people from Jane's childhood, as well as this family she comes to live with at the very end, between which we find the character of St. John, who is the complete opposite of Mr. Rochester, but who at the same time is not the kindest person ever. And this morning I was watching Beauty and the Beast, the 1940s movie directed by Jean Cocteau, because I am studying French cinema in class, and I realized that there are some pretty good comparisons between that movie and Jane Eyre, so I will get to that in a minute. But yeah, I was talking about St. John. St. John is this person who's presented to us as this very nice human being, but at the same time he is very controlling. I have the feeling that he only wants to marry Jane to use her and to bring her to India as a sort of aid in his project, and I have the feeling that if he had brought her with him, he wouldn't have really had a voice there. But anyway, now going to my crazy comparisons that I am making in this video, and which are going to make me look like a crazy person on the internet: Jane Eyre and Beauty and the Beast. Another parallelism that might be a bit far-fetched. I think that Jane Eyre is a perfectly comparable book to Beauty and the Beast, since the story is basically about a girl who goes to this castle where there is this very morally grey character living, which is Mr. Rochester. Mr. Rochester, as the Beast in Beauty and the Beast, is the owner of this castle, and despite the fact that he is not the nicest person, he tries to treat Jane with kindness, such as the Beast in the Beauty and the Beast, as you can see. But despite the fact, Jane realizes that he is not the best person ever, so at the very beginning she doesn't really allow her to fall in love with him, as you can see in Beauty and the Beast. And then there is this scene where Jane goes back because she realizes that he isn't the kindest person, and that doesn't really happen exactly like that with Beauty and the Beast, but he does leave the castle. And when she comes back and she realizes that weird things have happened and Rochester is blind, she starts treating him with kindness and allows him to transform from this very ugly person to a more reasonable one, or at least that's what I want to believe from the ending. And believe me, what happens in Beauty and the Beast? The Beast becomes a prince, such as in Jane Eyre. Mr. Rochester becomes a nice person. And yeah, that is my argument that I don't think anyone can tear down, and which is probably, as I said, making me look like an insane person on the internet. Now I'm going to leave the characters because I have already talked a lot about them and because my battery is dying and I need to change it. And I will get back in a minute and talk about the plot and the story. So, I changed my batteries and I'm back. On the story, which I have already hinted at and made with comparisons as I talked about the characters, I have to say that this is the story of Jane's life, so you get to see it from Jane's point of view, which really helps in terms of you identifying with her as a person and with you understanding her actions and her decisions in the book. But despite that, something that is really striking about the narration of the novel is the way he addresses the reader. As you most likely will know, even if you haven't read the book, and if you haven't, I still don't understand why you might be watching this, is the fact that he addresses the reader in a very unique way. As you can see in the famous line, "Reader, I married him." Because even though addressing the reader was something very common in Victorian literature, as you can see it in other novels, such as for instance in some of Trollope's story. I have only read The Warden, but he did it in that, so I think he does it in the other books in that series. The way the reader is addressed in Jane Eyre, I have the feeling that is a more personal way. The novel overall reads as if Jane was writing you a long letter about her life, such as in My Beloved Aurora Lee. The book actually reads like the book that the character Aurora Lee is writing in the poem. I think that is something that really sets up the tone of the story and that really makes you feel close to Jane as a character, since he is almost addressing you as if you were her friend. But the story is not only that. As I've already talked about how the story deals with the development of Jane as a character, so I am going to not talk about that again, and I'm going to focus on the story and its plot and gothic elements, beginning with that. The book is a Victorian novel that really inherits lots of things for the previous period, romanticism and its tropes, which is, as I said, something that you find in the characters and how they are built up, and which also you can see featured in the story as a point of intrigue. From the very beginning, you see some supernatural elements taking part in the story, since one of the first scenes is that scene in which Jane is put up in the Red Room and experience some sort of weird paranormal experience there. But the most gothic and creepy scenes take the scene while he is staying at Thornfield Hall and he starts to listen to all these sounds and voices at night, which are nothing else than the materialization of Bertha's trauma. But you don't really know that until the story goes on. And that all those paranormal gothic elements, which are not only seen in the paranormal things he experiences, but also in this setting, this very big, traditionally gothic mansion, which you can see in Anne Radcliffe's novels and which is typical from romantic novels, and that wilderness that is surrounding the house and in which he finds a place to sleep in the second part of the book when he moves out of Thornfield Hall. This wilderness, which is materialized as this force, as this place he comes to live with, and which I think would be really fun to make parallels with Wuthering Heights, but I haven't read Wuthering Heights in ages, so I am not going to make strange comparisons with that now. And all those gothic elements, I think, help emphasize the romance that takes part in the story, because such as in all those romantic stories from romanticism, the romantic storyline that happens between Jane and Mr. Rochester is a relationship that is pretty ambiguous. As the toxic relationship that happens in Wuthering Heights, in Jane Eyre you can really see how Jane's relationship with Rochester is not healthy at all, and that is something that Jane is very aware of, and which I have already discussed and I'm not going to talk about again now. But I think that all that helps in terms of you understanding the love story that goes on in the novel. And of course, all those gothic elements help make the reading experience more fun, since ghosts and supernatural elements always make a book more fun and more intriguing and can keep the reader engaged in the story. And moving on from that, the main plot is the one of Jane growing up as a person, and you can really see how that happens in the book throughout the very varied jobs she takes in and throughout her evolution as a governess. From the very beginning, the character of Jane is not really well treated as a child, which ends up with her being sent to this sort of boarding school orphanage place where he gets educated and where he ends up working at until he gets hired at Thornfield Hall. And when he moves out of Thornfield Hall, he goes to build this school with St. John. And that movement that Jane makes as a character, from being an orphan child who's not well treated to being working in her own school, is a development that I really like of her as a character, making up and living her own dreams as an educator. And I think that is something that is much to love about Jane, because you can really see how, despite the fact that he had an ugly childhood, she wants the best for children. And that is something that you can also see at the very end when he goes to look for Adele after she goes back with Mr. Rochester. Adele being the child that he was taking care of at Thornfield Hall, who had been sent to a boarding school. I think I have already said all I wanted to say about Jane Eyre. It's a perfectly beautifully written story, which I think it's a must read for anyone. I don't care if you don't like classics, you have to read Jane Eyre. It's a universal story that you need to know. It's a book in which you can see a lot of tropes that are featured in the story of literature, as I have already hinted at by my weird comparisons, which I believe are not as weird, and which I think really shows Charlotte Bronte's education, as in Aurora Leigh, which I also can't stop referencing because I recently fell in love with. You can see the multiple readings and literary material Elizabeth Barrett Browning had and knew of. And Jane Eyre, it's also a book that is very readable because it's a story that I believe hasn't grown older. The themes it talks about are nothing but the classics. The book talks about death, talks about love, talks about becoming yourself and growing up, and about loving yourself even in a way. As you can see, Jane's evolution from a very insecure character to a more secure woman who has in a way become the one that rules in the house, and he is the one who is taking care of Mr. Rochester. He's the one who has the main voice in the house once he gets blind. And that is something that I find to be the essence of the novel, and that is one of my favorite things about it. Jane is also someone who you can see is very aware of herself, aware of her mistakes, aware of what when he's doing something wrong, and that is also something that I love about her because she just feels so real. And what else do I have to say? I have already been talking for half an hour. Yeah, I think I'm going to close off this video here, since I am going to become insane if I keep making weird comparisons. Overall, Jane Eyre is my favorite book. I have confirmed it with this reread. Back when I read it in 2018, I fell in love with the story, with Jane's character, and I really like how easy it was to relate to her. And the second time round, I even fell more in love with her because from having grown up as a person, I can now relate to some other sides of her character that I couldn't really see in myself when I first read it. And at the same time, once while in my first read really could appreciate her as a person that was easy to relate to, this second time around I could appreciate her for many other things, and I can see how this book was a very important, not only when it was first released, but also nowadays. And yeah, it's my favorite book. I absolutely love it. I cannot wait to reread it, because I now know that even if I reread it, I am going to love it. And I cannot wait to talk about it with anyone else. So please, if you have read Jane Eyre and want to discuss it with me, tell me. And I hope you don't think I'm crazy because I make with comparisons with this book and Frankenstein and Oedipus Rex and things that might not make any sense. But anyway, Jane Eyre, 5 out of 5 stars once again. Will always be 5 out of 5 stars. I need to read Charlotte Bronte's other works because I cannot believe I have read Anne's 2 books, Wuthering Heights, which I need to reread, and Jane Eyre twice, but I haven't ever gotten to Villette, nor The Professor, nor Shirley, and I really want to read at least Villette because I have the feeling that I am going to love it as much as I love Jane Eyre. And yeah, I am going to close off this video here. I hope you liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up, comment down below if you read Jane Eyre, your thoughts on it, DM me to chat about it, and establish crazy theories with me. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and I hope your day is going amazing, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!